Hello, everybody, and welcome to big episode 300 of Optimal Living Advice. I'm Greg Audino, your host, so thankful to each and every one of you listeners for making this milestone possible. On our other shows, which air 7 days a week and started before OLA and didn't undergo a hiatus like OLA and don't take as long to compose as OLA, milestones like this happen pretty quickly and regularly. It's been more of a climb for us to get here, though. So I really appreciate your help and your support. And of course, I appreciate that sweet taste of victory. Over whom, I'm not really sure, but it still feels like a win. So thanks again, everyone. And let's keep on keeping on. We're going to jump into today's listener question now and start optimizing your life. I've been thinking and reading a lot about opening up a restaurant. It's scary, but it's something I've wanted to do for a long time. I know there are risks involved. I know all of this. But it doesn't stop people from sharing their opinions with me. And usually they aren't good opinions. I expected some criticism once the restaurant was up and running. But I've been surprised at how much of it I'm getting already when I've barely started this process. I even overheard some friends talking about how bad of a decision they think this is, and that I must be crazy to even try it. Not only am I starting to question if I should go through with this, but I'm questioning how close I really am with some of these people that I thought would support me. How can I know whether or not to trust this criticism, and maybe even these friendships? Okay, thank you, Asker. I really appreciate you sending this one in, and I also appreciate you naming the different layers of this question. It's great that you're able to see how this has compounded and that you've been able to keep up with your feelings in the midst of all that. Criticism is really hard to deal with, especially when it's coming from friends and being dealt out behind your back. Add to this the logistics of opening up a business, and I can see why you have a lot on your mind right now. So, one of the components of business ownership that I feel is often left behind by entrepreneurs is the role that feelings play. Of course, feelings will be present as a business owner, and these feelings will influence your decision-making to some degree. And instead of denying this, it's important to work with this. And if you listen to this show enough, you know that this comes up for all kinds of people, not just business people. Our feelings have to be acknowledged and respected so we can form a good relationship with them and not let them run rampant. And it sounds to me like you've arrived at the very first point in your journey as an entrepreneur at which this is becoming undeniably evident. Criticism is absolutely going to happen, and criticism stands to hit anyone right in their feelings. So, first of all, congratulations. This was always going to happen. It needs to happen, and it provides you with a very real dose of both what it means to be a business owner and how to grow as a business owner, if this doesn't scare you off. But where do you go from here? Well, criticism is interesting, and I think that we all have unique enough responses to it that I can't just sit here not knowing you and lay out some type of blueprint for how you can become more tolerant of it. What we can do, however, is air out some universal truths about criticism that can hopefully help springboard you to learn more about your relationship with criticism and how to master it. So first of all, everyone gets criticized. Those who are brave enough to put themselves out there as business owners are especially susceptible to it, doubly so if they are particularly successful. And with that being said, criticism does not have the same value coming from or going towards any specific person. The validity of any piece of criticism is anyone's guess, and therefore, just because you're receiving criticism does not necessarily mean that you've made the wrong choice, not by a long shot. Now, second, the same way that you can't just assume someone else's feelings or thoughts about how you could be better to be right, you also want to question your own thoughts and feelings that come up in the face of these criticisms. Some say criticism is most likely to hurt only when a small part of us knows it's true. It's a really nice thought, but there's more to it than that. Even if we easily dismiss a piece of criticism the first time around, sometimes we become convinced of it being true over time if we hear about it from a lot of different people, or if we hear about it from one particular person whose opinion we hold in high regard for one reason or another. who's to say if this is wise or not? Sometimes everybody saying the same thing means you're delusional and that you probably should listen to them and that the criticism is valid. But other times, you hear something on repeat from people who are afraid of doing what you do. Maybe they tried and failed. Maybe they haven't done the same research as you have. And their criticisms, while common and repetitive, are still misguided. So how we relate to people, who we have in our lives, how well we feel we fit in, the biases we carry around, the narratives we've had since childhood, all of these things and more affect how seriously we take criticism. And they don't have anything to do with what the criticism is specifically. And then the third and final thing I'll say about criticism is that, like anything, you get better at dealing with it the more that you're exposed to it. So as an aspiring entrepreneur, you are at your weakest right now. This is your first major bout with criticism, and it's going to be harder to keep going after this one than it will be the next time you face criticism. This is especially true since this time you're hearing it from people that you care about, not just random Yelp reviewers. And if you've watched South Park, you probably know what happens to them anyway. With that being said, let's finish by talking about these friends of yours that you caught talking behind your back. Like I mentioned, your reaction to this particular criticism has a lot behind it. How much did you count on these people? How long have you known them? Were they echoing things that you've historically struggled with? Maybe a lack of follow-through or something like that? Have they started businesses of their own? Have you never quite felt as though you've had their approval, etc.? Try to sort through these ideas as objectively as you can. And it may be hard because no one wants to feel as though they can't trust their friends. And I am really, really sorry, truly sorry that you overheard them speaking about you in the way that they did. But know that any type of friend, including reliable friends who have demonstrated a lot of care for you, can say something about you behind your back, something unfavorable. We've all said things about our friends behind their backs, and this is not the time to pretend that we haven't. But what has driven us to do that? That's the question. That's what we need to focus on. What's driven you to say something behind the back of one of your friends? Maybe you were genuinely concerned for them and needed to express it to someone else because you weren't quite ready to say it to your friend directly or didn't want to hurt them. Maybe it was reflective of your own insecurities. Maybe someone else was saying something and that old instinct to keep up as a member of the group kicked in for a minute, and you said something that maybe you didn't mean. We can't write off every single person that takes exception to something that we do, even if they tried to hide it from us and we find out anyway. Especially if these are good friends of yours, it's important to put your pride aside and entertain the possibility of these people still loving you anyway. I won't recommend bringing it up with them or not bringing it up with them. That's for you to decide. Again, depending on a lot of the factors I just mentioned and what feels right for you. But whatever you do, know that criticism comes in many different forms, with many different intentions. And if you are willing to explore and be curious about the criticism you receive and how it makes you feel, you give yourself a chance to grow immensely as both a business owner and as a person. Okay, and thanks once more to the asker for submitting this really great question. Like I said, I truly think you found yourself at a critical point on your journey towards opening this business. So I'm really happy for both of us that you submitted your question today, and I hope my answers helped you out a bit. And for my fellow listeners, thank you so much for coming today and listening all the way through. Thank you for subscribing and sharing the show as well. That, of course, means a lot. And if you would like my help yourself, you can go ahead and email me with whatever's on your mind at advice@oldpodcast.com, advice@oldpodcast.com. I'd love to hear from you and help you out as best I can. It's time to go for now, though, folks. 300 down, and on to 301 on Monday after the weekend. I'll see you there, where your optimal life awaits.